Tuesday, despite earlier assurances the deadline would be the last. The Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, in the late hours yesterday announced a 3-day extra extension amidst reports the 80% target by government is in limbo. Shortly, we'll bring you details of what the latest extension entails, but let's hear from Bright Simmons, who's the Honorary Vice President of Imani Africa, react to the current government dilemma in meeting its 80% target.
Okay, so the point is that the government's option of default is constrained by a number of important factors. One factor being that it casts this whole program into uncertainty, and it is very unlikely that if there were a series of major, credible, potentially winnable legal challenges mounted against these different actions the government is taking, that the IMF will proceed to agree to a program, because that will mean that there's a risk to the program. And the IMF has to protect its money as well. People forget that like any other lender, when you are lending to a country, you consider the risk that the country may not be able to execute the program for which they are borrowing the money, and the risk that they might not be able to pay you back. So as a lender, as any lender, the risks are important. So I don't think that the government will take precipitous decisions that endanger the IMF program, especially before they get a program. Once they get a program, defaulting while they are still under the IMF program places the IMF also in a quandary because of reputational reasons. If Ghana is under an IMF program and is defaulting on debt, it reduces the credibility of that program. I don't think that the government will go to the extent of a broad default. But we all know that the government's credit rating is at rock bottom. So it will default on some obligations, as we've seen it do in the case of Cocoa Board, even though in the case of Cocoa Board it was an SOE.
So that's the Honorary Vice President of Imani Africa, Bright Simmons. Sani Abdul Rahman is my colleague with 3 Business, who join us in studio with details of the latest extension as well. But listeners must bear in mind that government continues to seek this domestic debt exchange program as part of requirements to secure a board approval for a $3 billion extended credit facility from the International Monetary Fund. And that, as you heard the Finance Minister announce on Monday night, is very important to prevent the Ghanaian economy from crashing. Sani Abdul Rahman is my colleague, like I mentioned. He's joined me in studio with some details. So, Sani, it's becoming a long-drawn battle between government and bondholders to agree on a restructure. But what is informing this decision to extend again? Because we're told it's the last of extensions.
Well, certainly from the statement of the Finance Ministry, the reason given for the latest extension is as a result of what they call technical glitches that bondholders, more especially corporate bondholders, are encountering in signing up. You know, the signing up process is largely online. So the indication is that there were a lot of people. The traffic was quite high for last minute bondholders who want to sign up onto the debt exchange program, and that may have caused some system challenges, and they had to extend so that those who still want to can come on board. But really, that's an explanation that from where we sit at 3 Business, we do not we do not really get the explanation very well. You understand? I don't even know the right word to use for that, because we know and we can confidently say government has not met the 80% target, and even in that statement, government is urging more people to sign up. So if you have officially closed the program, but you're still asking people to sign up, it means you haven't reached your target, and you still have somewhat a long way to go as far as reaching the 80% participation target is concerned.
And let's just stay on that 80% target. you, Three Business, have confirmed that the government has not met that target, as they continue to say that the exercise is voluntary. There's been mention of pension funds, the government wanting to do a U-turn on pension funds and have it brought back into the threshold as to bonds that will go into this domestic debt exchange program. Have we confirmed if that is going to be the case now?
So as of close of day yesterday, our sources inside government indicated the offer to pension funds, the enticing offer to pension funds has been finalized, but they are yet to engage them formally. What we know is that government is looking at giving them quite an enticing offer, which would have their interest rates protected. You remember, the rest of the bondholders will have some sort of haircut on their interest because of the program and the fact that government wants to reduce its debt burden. But in case of the pensioners, labor I'm referring to, government is looking at maintaining their interest at 10%, but the gap will be turned into another instrument that will be paid at maturity. So they may not be directly incurring some losses on their interest. That is for labor on the use of pension funds. But we spoke also to some of the leadership on the labor side, and they seem not to be aware that a new offer is going to be tabled, but they have maintained whatever the offer, no matter how enticing it looks, they are not going to sign up.
Just finally, on what happens on this final extension. It's supposed to be when? Friday, is it? What will happen after that expires? That deadline also elapses.
So government will have to find ways to ensure that it meets its targets in the next 2 to 3 days. That is Friday, when the fifth deadline or sixth deadline elapses. But if it reaches and government has still not met the required level of participation in order to go before the board of the International Monetary Fund for the consideration of Ghana's bailout request, then it means government will have to first extend the deadline, second may have to find a way to rationalize expenditure so that at least it will free up some fiscal space in the budget, for example. Then the final option may be for government to turn to the IMF and say, hey, this approach of debt restructuring is not going to work with my people. Could we look at other possible ways of granting the bailouts to us to restore our economy without our people incurring these steep losses? These are options that government may want to explore when maybe it does not meet the deadline, or it does not meet the required participation by Friday, which is the deadline.
Right, then that's my colleague Sani Abdul Rahman with Three Business, providing some more insight into what has become a long-drawn battle for the Ghanaian government to get domestic investors or domestic bondholders to sign on to its debt exchange program. It continues to remain a prerequisite to securing that $3 billion extended credit facility from the IMF. And on Monday, like I mentioned earlier, the finance minister alluded to the fact that a lack of government restructuring its domestic debt could result in the economy crashing. Let us know what you think on our various social media handles, even as we work the phone lines to engage Professor John Gachi. He's the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, as to exactly what all of this means. Another deadline following a deadline that was described as the last. Questions about the credibility and even government going now onto the external market to engage external creditors as well to get a restructuring of the debt on the external front. But while we wait to connect with Professor John Gachi, let's stay on a matter that's closely related to this, because the majority members of parliament pushing for the dismissal of the finance minister Ken Ofori-Atta say it is time for him to go. The majority lawmakers in October last year demanded the immediate sacking of the finance minister, who they accused of running down the Ghanaian economy. This led to President Akufo-Addo intervening and asking the legislators allow the minister to execute 3 tasks on his behalf before he can be shown the exit. These included the presentation of the 2023 budget statement and its appropriation, as well as negotiate an IMF deal for economic bailout. Many had anticipated the finance minister will be given the sack by end of December 2022, but almost 2 months into the new year, the minister is still at post. Andy Apiakubi says the justification of Ms. Ofori-Attah's stay in office is untenable, especially when all the milestones for his exit have been met. He's been speaking to 3FM.
Well, I believe that this is a good beginning. The expectation is that something more will happen, and probably at the time that he ends the whole program of reshuffling, we will probably see the downsizing of the government. So this is only just the beginning. That is my belief.
Okay, and has the majority given up on the call for the finance minister to be removed from office?
No. We are still where we are, and you know that constitutionally we can do as much, not in total. You know that constitutionally the mandate is for the president to decide to remove and appoint, and therefore we as parliamentarians, what we can do is to, within the constitution, do the advocacy and present our position to him, and the prerogative to either act on it or otherwise rests with him. So we will do what we have to do, and that is exactly what we have done. And we have come to a constitutional limit as we can do as parliamentarians. So the onus is now on him to respond to our constitutional request.
Okay, are you still sticking to the agreement that you had with the president that said that the finance minister will be removed from office after the IMF deal is secured? Is that still on?
Well, the indicators were not exactly the conclusion of the total conclusion of the IMF. The roadmaps were the passing of the budget, the approval of the appropriation, and the conclusion of the first phase of the IMF negotiation, which we have reached already. Because we have reached a conclusion at staff level. This is the first phase of it. So for all that happened during the negotiations, we have delivered as one party, as members of parliament, and it is up to the president to also deliver as a contracting party.
So that means you have already reached that phase where he is supposed to honor his word?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, all 3 milestones have been achieved. And this has been the commitment of the members of parliament to the negotiation. And when we have reached our end of the milestone, we expect the president to also do the same.
That's Andy Apiakubi. He is the spokesperson for the majority, the 80 initial, who held that news conference in October thereabout, demanding the resignation of Ken Ofori-Attah as the country's finance minister. But closely linked to this, as you've been well aware of in the last few hours, and the president's reshuffle of his ministers, and it's failed to impress sections of the Ghanaian populace, and many who describe it as needless. And per the letter which was read to the MPs in Parliament yesterday by the Speaker, we know that the Member of Parliament for Adansi Asukwa, Katie Hammond, has been designated to head the Ministry of Trade. Herbert Krapper is now, who was Deputy at the Trade Ministry, is headed for the Deputy position of the Energy Ministry. Dr. Mohammed Amin Anta is now Minister of State Designate at the Finance Ministry. Also, Deputy Minister for Local Government, Obi Amwa, has been elevated to the status of Minister of State for Local Government and Rural Development. In Shaiso MP, Stephen Amwa is Deputy Trade Minister. Brian Echampong, who's a Betifi MP, is now the Minister for Food and Agriculture, and former SIGA boss Stephen Amwa Boateng takes over as Chieftaincy Minister. Well, Professor Ransford Jampo has been reacting to all of this, and he tells us that the decision not to undertake a major reshuffle is an insult to Ghanaians and an affront to the country's democracy.
People are asking for major reshuffles. Reshuffle in a manner that affects his own cousin, the finance minister. Generally, he has not done, I've seen the list. He's not done reshuffle. What he has done is to fill vacant spaces that have been created in government. And my argument is that filling vacant spaces in government is not coterminous with reshuffle. No. And the intransigence on the part of the president about calls for reshuffle, in my view, is quite snobbish and is quite disrespectful to the people of Ghana and serves as a severe affront to the expression of dissent. And it is being perpetuated or led by a president in whom we used to be well pleased in terms of his pedigree.
That's Professor Ransford Jampo speaking there, reacting to the reshuffle by the president. And let us know what you think. But you're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. Our top story this afternoon: credibility of government's domestic debt exchange program on the line as Finance Ministry announces another extension with indications the 80% target has not been met. We've been bringing you more details on that and hoping to hear from Professor John Gachi, who is a dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School. Also on the reshuffle conversation, we've been hearing from Andy Apiakubi, and he's the spokesperson for the 80 majority MPs who initially held that news conference asking for Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to go. They say now is the time the president must honor his word on that particular promise he made to them and relieve the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta of his duties. We'll bring you a lot more on this as we continue in the bulletin, but the National Democratic Congress has thrown its support behind Norton MP Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa in his quest to expose rot at the National Cathedral Project. Chair of the party, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, meeting the members of the minority, said the NDC will ensure the fire doesn't die down.
We are going to back to refocus on the issues of the bad governance countries. I would, including the work on the National Cathedral, I think that at the end of that particular journey, we may have maybe some bishop ordained from within the caucus here. And so, on behalf of the party, we want to commend our Honorable Okudzeto for wonderful work he's doing on this capital. We commend all others, ranking members for finance, health, and other. We know that the fire will continue burning.
That's the chair of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia. Let's get on the phone and speak to Komla Kluche. He is our parliamentary affairs correspondent who's been following that event for us. So Komla, talk to us. What necessitated the decision by the leadership of the party to meet the minority caucus again?
Well, I mean, the NDC has been saying that the fight regarding the expose on the National Cathedral is one of the many instances or the many issues that they are going to be dealing with respect to exposing the NPP administration. Of course, Okudzeto-Ablakwa has been leading this fight. We know that Reverend Kusibu is on a certain course with him regarding seeking an injunction to stop him from going ahead to publishing some of these issues, even though the matter is even before trial. But the NDC says they are not perturbed about this. They think that, as a matter of fact, what Okudzeto is doing, in fact, it has the full backing of the party, and whichever support that they will give him and other members of the minority, they should go ahead and they will solidly do that. And come to a point where government will reason with the people, and this issue about the cathedral and all that would be a thing of the past. In principle, we are not against the construction of the cathedral, but at times in which we find ourselves, it does appear that they will not be able to contain it as per what the economic conditions are.
Right. So all well and good on the side of the party supporting its MPs, but in Parliament there appears to be concerns about certain arrangements for the minority leadership following the ousting of Haruna Idrisu, some news making the rounds and the likes. What can you tell us in relation to that?
No, it hasn't. It has not been an issue at all. Already yesterday it was solved. The clerks to Parliament have rearranged, where the minority leader will be sitting, and the former minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, will be sitting. He sits close to, what's his name, Cletus Avoka. That is also a front bench. And per the arrangement, the protocol they have is that as former leader, that is where they will be sitting. So even if Atuforsen or Chairman Sabusu no longer is the majority of the minority leader, the front row seat closer to where the deputy speaker sits is what is reserved for them. For the other leaders like Dr. James Kluchaveji, they sit directly behind the minority leadership, that's the front row, so they could serve as a support or a guiding base to the front bench. So as far as we are concerned and what we know, the season arrangement hasn't been an issue at all.
Right then, that's Kamla Kluche. He's our parliamentary affairs correspondent speaking to us this afternoon from Parliament on a meeting between the leadership of the NDC and the minority in Parliament. We'll move away from this, but you're listening to the news. It's streaming live on Facebook as well. Our handles 3FM 927. And we'll move away from the NDC now and take you to the northern part of the country and on a subject bordering on health, because over 130 children have been admitted to the Tamale Teaching Hospitals, Central Hospital and West Hospital since November 2022 for contracting measles. This year, more than 50 cases have already been reported from Changli, Sakasaka and Kakpaili, thereby raising concerns of the possibility of fresh outbreaks. Measles is described by medical experts as an infection of the respiratory system caused by a virus. Symptoms of the disease include rashes, cough, runny nose, fever, and red eyes. And on Monday, we here at 3FM cited a memo addressed to the health facilities in the region, informing them of the outbreak of the virus. Now, given the current season, which presents one of the greatest risks for the transmission of the virus, the district health directorate and facilities are being urged to intensify surveillance on measles and other diseases of epidemic potential for prompt action. Let's get on the phone and speak to the Northern Regional Director of Public Health, Dr. Brima Abubakari, on what the situation is. Many thanks, Doc, for speaking to us this afternoon. So, over 50 cases already this year. What is attributing or what is contributing to this rapid case rise?
Thank you very much. I don't know where we got your information from. Over 50 cases for this year. I don't know where the information is coming from because this year is 15 suspected cases that we sent to Noguchi awaiting the confirmation of the results. And as we speak, even all the patients are fine. They have recovered. Last year we had some substantive numbers, and we got the results later, and again all the patients recovered. So the 50 cases you talk about, I don't know where that's coming from.
Those were numbers we picked from our reporters. But these children, you say about 15, some of the samples currently at Noguchi. Do we know if they've been vaccinated against the disease? Because we know it forms one of the now major 11 killer diseases which vaccinations are supposed to go for.
Yes. You know, once we have an outbreak of any infectious disease, we do case investigation. And since last year, a number of the cases we had, some actually received one vaccine. You know, measles now, we give vaccination twice at age 9 months and 18 months. So many of them were either not vaccinated or received only one vaccination. That is where our investigation led us to. And some of the children are as old as 5 years or even more.
Right, but we know here at 3FM that there's been concerns of shortages of vaccines. Does that affect you in your region currently?
Well, there are always intermittent shortage of vaccines for many years because vaccines are commodities that can be exhausted at any point in time, or that can be expired. So if you pick your report or your information from somewhere that there have been shortage of vaccines, I cannot, I'm not in the position to deny because I don't know your source. But like I said, medicines, vaccines, or whatever, at any point in time, you can have shortage. And we have a supply chain system in Ghana, right from the immunization program at the headquarters in Accra, that supply to all regions. Then the regions will then supply to district to sub-districts, and then all the way to community level where we have our chiefs compounds, provided they have the capacity to store the vaccine.
Right. Just finally on strategy going forward to prevent what could be a case rise. We know from the release from the Ghana Health Service that the Harmattan season could be a major contributory factor. What is the plan going forward for you in the region?
Yes, like you rightly said, one of the measures is to release the alert that we do for many diseases when we are approaching the season. So we normally will remind our service providers, because the patients will go to them with the symptoms, with the presentations. And therefore, once we bring this reminder, so that when they are considering what we call differential diagnosis, depending on what the patient presents, they will consider that particular disease that it can equally present. And the alert that we issue usually will contain the common presenting symptoms to the case. So it's one of the measures that we put in place. The second measure is to continue to ensure that all children, because like we said, measles vaccine is available for all children born in Ghana. Once they reach 8-9 months, they are qualified for the first vaccine. And when they reach 18 months, they are qualified for the second vaccine. So we continue to encourage and educate our mothers to come. And you know, when they go for postnatal, right from antenatal, this education starts. For postnatal, when they go, they tell them this particular time, this is your next visit. And every visit has different vaccines that are being given.
Right.
So when it's due for measles, then they are given the vaccines at the time. So it's a routine thing that will continue. I will continue to add it to the health education that our staff give to our mothers.
Right then. Doc, I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon.
Okay, so you're welcome.
That's Dr. Brahma Baba Abubakar. He's the Northern Regional Director of Health Service, speaking to us this afternoon on the outbreak of measles. He says that 15 cases so far this year. Some of them samples have been taken to Noguchi for testing. We'll end with an autopsy report from the Ghana Police Service captured in a statement. We just reviewed that the suspects are the center of the West Hills Mall death case. Shadrach Alu died of asphyxiation and obstruction of his airway by a foreign body. A police autopsy report confirmed that the 32-year-old deceased actually ingested what the police believed to be marijuana. The police pathologist found 8 zipped packets of dry leaves that were likely drug-related in the deceased's throat, tied with a piece of black polythene. That's our bulletin for this afternoon. A lot more news when you log on to 3news.com. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. Business comes up shortly right after this.